I will turn it over to our host, Dave Witt.
Thank you, Ruth Marie, and welcome everyone to today's presentation. I will be your host today. I'm speaking to you from Blanchard headquarters in San Diego, California. Just a little bit, I'll be introducing our subject matter expert, Bob Freytag. But before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of practice using the attendee chat feature. Bob has built a very interactive presentation for us. He's going to be asking you questions, asking you to share your experience. And I want to make sure that you have got your fingers limbered up before we do that. So if I can, I'm going to direct you to the bottom center of your screen. You're looking for the icon that's got two speech bubbles on it. That's the attendee chat feature. Once you see that icon, go ahead and click on it. It'll open up a panel on your screen and you will be able to type in a hi or a hello and let us know where you're participating from today. I'm going to send a hi or hello to all of you right now. You'll see that I'm participating from San Diego. How about you? Where are you joining us from today? We had over 300 people register for today's presentation, and we'd love to know where you're participating from. So you're seeing there that Bob and I are I'm from San Diego. Bob's participating from his home office in Suffolk, Virginia. And how about you? I'm seeing people share that in the Q&A feature. I'd like to welcome everyone that's joined us from Abilene, Lima, Ohio, other locations. Good to have you with us. Be sure to go ahead and share with us if you can in the chat feature also, and maybe Ruth Marie can help us with that if we need to go ahead and enable that for participants. But we're also seeing your comments in the Q&A panel. Well, at this time, I would like to introduce today's subject matter expert. Bob Freytag is a senior executive consulting partner and a master SL2 master facilitator who's been with Blanchard since 1999. He has more than 25 years of training and consulting experience in the military, government agencies, and a wide variety of private sector industries and nonprofit agencies. Bob, thank you for being here with us today to explore overcoming destructive leadership.
Oh, well, thank you very much, David. It's a pleasure to be able to spend a little bit less than an hour of our lives with each other that we'll never get back again. I'm looking forward to having a little bit of fun on the session as well, and just helping people see some of the things that they may already know, but how we connect things. As you said, we're from Blanchard. We get a chance to work cross industries internationally. And in particular, I tend to focus in the world of first responders. That's my primary focus now. And I actually come from a background of first responders, starting all the way back when I was 14 years old at our local volunteer fire department in Port Jervis, New York, of all things. Now, 14, 15 years old, that's not old enough to actually ride on the runs that we had and the call outs that we had, but I was not too young to learn what Brasso was all about and how to polish and how to preserve and take care of the gear and the equipment to make sure that it was always ready to do its part in the work of our first responders. So had a lot of work there and understanding of first responders. Then I joined the Navy back in 1980. I know, a long time ago, and I had a 21-year career in the Navy, David. And in that career, I was a submariner, is what they call that. And if anybody knows a little bit about submarines, you'll realize that once we deploy, we're all we have. Very diverse environment, but it's contained in the submarine that you see in the bottom right. There is one of our bigger boats. It's a Trident class submarine, 560-foot long, 42-foot wide. And the original boats that I was riding on for two different submarines, they were 425-foot long, 33-foot wide. And you can imagine what happens when you're underwater with people. You got to learn how to get along. You have to learn how to communicate. There's all different types of personalities and needs and even generations involved in that work. And so personally, I've gained a lot of experience, made a lot of mistakes along the way, have seen a lot of best practices, both that I was able to see in my last 5 years of the Navy, where I ran the Navy's Nuclear Weapons Inspection Center. And I worked for Subforce, Submarine Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet, and Strategic Command as well. And I carried those thoughts of leadership, managing and supervising over into our world and work at Blanchard, Dave. And what I am really privileged and honored to be able to see through my time as an EMT, my time as a first responder on board our submarines, firefighting test evaluation. For many years, I had a chance to work on an SRT, a special reaction team at Dam Neck, Virginia. There's a certain call to duty that exists in this community. And I learned that call of duty. When something happens, you turn towards it. And I've lived it. And I'd love to be able to just share some of the things that we've uncovered, because in no small way, David, you announced this as overcoming destructive leadership. I was actually one of those destructive leaders. Early on in my career, I learned how to do things to people, how to light a fire under people, and I actually never did a good job in my first part of my career of lighting a fire within people. I was taught that if feelings were important, they would have issued them in a sea bag. My job was to make sure they knew what to do, train them to do it better than anybody else, and bring them home safely. And what was amazing for me as I grew at Blanchard and was able to see more and learn more and experience more of the world of leading, that there is a difference between leading, the things that we do with people, and managing and supervising, the things that we do to people, systems, processes, protocols. All of those are important. We don't oftentimes get as much help in the world of leading. So that's why we were excited to have the opportunity to work at the conference down in Orlando this year, and to actually bring some of the things that we're discovering and sharing them in unique ways, if you will, in concepts that actually help people shrink the gap between their intentions of doing a good job. You know, you wake up in the morning and you have these intentions, and then the gap between the impact at the end of the day. And quite often the frustration lives in that gap. And some days it's a very big gap. So to do that, we thought that it might be best if we look at these key takeaways, recognizing the signs of destructive leadership. I thought that was an important one for me and others as we've shared this through the years, because most leaders don't intend or wake up saying, today's my chance to be a destructive leader. I can't wait, right? What they do, Dave, is they look at this and say, I'm going to lead the best way I know how. We got stuff we got to get done. There's results that we have to get done, and they drive hard for them. And most people tend to lead as they've been led, and not with direct malice, not with disregard or irresponsibility. They just have the tools that have been given to them by example from others around them. And the culture actually tends to reinforce some of these challenges too, if we're not careful. So I think it'd be important if in our time together, we get a chance to take a look at those signs so people can do a little bit of a checkup from the neck up on these things, Dave, and see if, I got some of these signs emerging in myself, right? Understand some of the general, what is classically being called generational differences. But one of the things that we know is people are different. There is no one size fit all. So if you ascribe to the concept of boxing people in these generational boxes, there's some efficacy in there. But generally, it unpacks itself quite well when we say, we got to get to know each other. They got to get to know us. We got to get to know them. How do they like to communicate? How do we like to communicate? Communication is key to all of this. There's a difference between cooperating and collaborating. I want to be clear on that. We're going to spend a moment on that on our call today as well. And once we understand that the approach and the approachability are really key points in all of this, Dave, I think that it's going to make a big difference in patience, perspective, and progress. There are some actionable strategies I'd like to share with you, some best practices that we've picked up along the way. I've got about 6 or 7 of those I'd like to share with the group, but when we move a little bit deeper into the conversation. And then if we lead well, if we understand what that means, and we work well and better with others and them with us, using these 2 bigger macro concepts that I'm going to share, then what it tends to do is reduce stress. And by reducing stress, we're increasing resilience. There's a chance people will feel more respected across the generations and differences that people have. And it all comes down to the mission-driven culture. And that's one of the big galvanizing pieces, Dave, that holds most departments, agencies, teams together, is that mission-driven culture. That's super important. So these are our intentions to share these when we get moving forward. David, if you see a question come up or something at any point in time that you feel is important for me to get my eyeballs on or my head around, just come right in. Hey, Elmo, Bob, enough, let's move on. Or slow-mo, Bob, I've got something I want to say with you. So quite often when I'm doing keynotes, Dave, around the US or even internationally, I'll oftentimes put this phrase in front of people and I'll say, of these 3 words, team, what would you say is the most important word? And why do you believe that? And that's a pretty cool exercise, right? It takes a few minutes to get through and give people a chance to talk about it. And I invite those on today's session to do the same thing. Look at these 3 words and say, of these 3 words for you, which is most important? Now, sitting down, taking it from the front, listening and participating in a role of exchange of a session like this, it's pretty easy to theoretically believe the word is and. And I'm going to say that functionally, that is the most important word, not just theoretically. So we get that academically in our minds. We know that that's the important word. Yet the next part of this, when we pull the onion back a little bit, is over the last week, if you could look at a recording of your behaviors, actions, conversations, what would that recording reveal that you were most focused on? Results or relationships? And the truth is, our best leaders get this balance right. They put the premium on the word and. It is about results, no doubt. And results actually become sustainable and less stressful when we have higher trust relationships. So for me, the walk away for me in all of this is another phrase that I've developed or I ascribe to, if you will, through the years, Dave, and that's called results move at the speed of relationships. And these relationships move at the speed of trust. So Bob 1.0 was all about results, and I could push for them. I could tell you what results I wanted, Dave, and drive your behaviors and demand your behaviors and push for your behaviors and hold you accountable if I didn't get the behaviors that drove the results. And what I was missing in all of that, and it was right that you knew what results I wanted from you. That's always going to be important. It was right that I trained you to get those results. That's right. It was right that I brought you home safely. That's my commitment to you. But what was missing in there is the sustainability of those results. When my grandpa taught me those 3 things, they stuck with me, but those aren't the only 3 things. You can have the best funding, the best gear, the best training, the best people, and still have a problem with the sustainability of results and a work environment that just doesn't feel psychologically safe to be around. There's a sense of fear associated with the environment. And that is the realm of leading. That is the realm of leading. And so the realm of leading is the one of creation of trust. The understanding that leadership happens when you're not there, every bit as much as when you are there. And that compliance is an important thing, but when Bob 1.0 was leading people, that's the best I would get out of people is just compliance, to the point of perhaps malicious compliance. Are you with me, Dave? And so they would do just what I told them and only what I told them. And that became problematic through the years and created a lot of additional stress for me. I mean, look at me, Dave. I'm only 26 years old. I mean, a little bit of a joke there, but just a little one. I actually ended up, because I didn't turn the corner fast enough on this awareness and understanding, and it took a pretty significant emotional event in my life to help wake me up, get me out of my mental models, if you will, my limited perspective of what I should be doing in a role of authority, in a position of authority. And I came home to an empty house, and I was leading the best way I knew how. And my reaction to that in trying to catch up with my high school sweetheart is I prepared a list of questions I wanted to ask her. And it occurred to me, Dave, that in that list of questions, what I was actually preparing for her is something that I would prepare for many of my sailors that ended up wanting to transfer from me, an exit interview. I became really good halfway through my career at exit interviews and new hire training. And that's the same reaction I had when my wife wasn't there when I got home. And she wasn't there, not because I'm a bad person and I'm a yeller, screamer, violent, any of those sorts of things, right? I was just always focused on results. And there was a checklist that she was working on. And I asked her to share with me the status of the checklist. And there was 2 things on it that she missed. And what did I focus on? The 2 things that she missed. Not all of the other, 40 things that she had got done. And she ended up not feeling trusted by me overall. And that wasn't fair. It didn't create a sense of justice or fairness in our relationship at that point in time. And it was something that I had done throughout our whole time together. So that said, please, folks, be mindful of what this means beyond the academics, that results, which are paramount, we need to get those, but they're going to move at the speed of relationships. Relationships and trust is what creates the collaboration, the sense of well-being, the willingness to look beyond self. And this is where the sustainability of results come from. And what we're really talking about here is performance. And the expression that we use at Blanchard all the time is called partnering for performance. Partnering. What does that mean? Authority actually is a poor substitute for leadership. You'll need authority from time to time. Your position gains access for your team and other members to things that they don't necessarily have legitimate access to. But if we've got to depend upon what's on our collars, what's on our sleeves, what's on our cuffs to actually solve and reconcile most of the problems of the day, we've got some trouble and challenges with relationships. And so I just thought it was important to get that into our mind, because without that understanding, we actually end up needing to become really good at conflict resolution. And what I've learned to ask through the years, Dave, is when people ask me, hey, Bob, can you teach us about conflict resolution? The answer is always, sure, I can. Yeah, absolutely, I can. And they learn how to become masters of resolving conflict, when actually the better question is, what's causing your conflicts? Conflict management is a compensatory process. So let's get in front of this. Let's figure out what's driving things. And most of the time it's coming down to respect, dignity, trust, a breakdown of the relationships that are occurring. So let's take a quick peek at what destructive, AKA this expression you may have heard through the years called toxic leadership, is all about. And toxic leadership is a type of leadership that's destructive to members of the team and the overall workplace. And the more I think about this, and I want to share this as well, it's destructive to yourself as well, ultimately. And quite often leaders don't know that they're actually perpetuating destructive leadership, because they're leading the way they've been led. They're leading the way that the command and control exclusive hierarchical part of this drives them to behave. And like I said, it's very rarely with intent and malice. It is, however, a self-focused point of view, and it's viewed by others, which is the reality to you as a leader, as an abuse of power or position, right? This is where favoritism comes in. This is where procedural and distributive justice and fairness aren't there. This is where lack of clarity is there. We don't approach and seek out clarity. We don't become learners ourselves, because the leader themselves is afraid to say, I don't know, or I didn't know, and accepting responsibility for mistakes and teaching others through that mistakes do happen, and that their job, their wiring needs to be one of accepting ownership and responsibility. That's where true accountability comes from. We don't oftentimes think of it that way. And as a result, destructive or toxic leadership emerges. That's a result of the math that's happening. These two expressions are on the right-hand side of the equal sign, David, from the different math that's happening in front of it. So for me, one of the key things is this aspect of approachability. What do I have to do so people feel like it's safe that they can approach me and talk with me genuinely, authentically? And for me, I have to drop down the judgment, the quick problem solving. I've got to listen better, listen to make them feel heard. Now, a lot of this discussion, David, is in a white paper called Employee Work Passion Volume 5, Leader Values and Employee Work Intentions. What we do as leaders impact the way, the intentions that people have, and those intentions actually drive their behavior and results. All right. So this is free. If anybody's interested in it, all of our research is free. Be happy to send it. It is peer reviewed. It is also award-winning stuff. So we're pretty proud of it. This is, of all the things that we do at Blanchard, this is some of the most important for me, simply because I'm an engineer by background and training, right? I like to know, not that we hope that it's going to work. We believe it's working. People feel like it's working. I like to know why, that the gear sets behind it all. So this provides the gears for it. So let's take a look at the characteristics of harmful leadership. We've done this research through a number of hundreds of thousands of people have contributed to this, David, if you need an N number on this. And what we ask them is to think about your worst leader, and then we catalog the behaviors that we hear. And there are trends in different industries you can imagine. And then what are the best leaders? What are the things, the behaviors that your worst leaders and best leaders do, right? And of those things, we've developed a list. We actually have a list. It's not a naughty and nice list, and we don't keep track of people's names. We never ask for names in these things, but we actually can trend these out across things like recruitment challenges and retention challenges, hiring practice problems that they have, disappointments that they have with teams, underperformance that's out there, and satisfaction, overperformance. Where do people deliver +1, right? We take a look at this and compare this information. So what did they do? What reactions do these behaviors create? And we share these with leaders and help them get a perspective of the right-hand side of the equal sign, right? So of the things that we see, some of the drivers of poorer performance tend to map out to this thing called ego. I call this, and Ken has taught me through the years, I'm a co-author with him on a former program that we had called Servant Leadership. Dave, you probably remember that. And we would call this edging good out, right? And there's a couple different drivers of this. We'll start off with the one that most people recognize with overinflated ego. Ego is not a bad thing. Pride is not necessarily a bad thing, but an overabundance leads to arrogance. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence is something that we're trying to gain and others depend upon for us to become confident, right? And then when you are confident, Dave, and then you make a decision in your mind that there's nothing left to learn, either from a person, a process, a team, that's the point where you tip over into arrogance. And when that happens, you develop this perceived overly high opinion of yourself from others. It shows up sometimes as promoting yourself. We see it in boasting, taking the credit, showing off. When I work with Goldsmith, he has shared with me, Marshall Goldsmith, that sometimes it's also shows up as adding value all the time. Somebody will say something and you'll say, and you just got to put your 2 cents in there, right? That's another way that this shows up. And demanding all the attention. Now, another way that this ego driver shows up, and this is the truth for me as Bob 1.0, is through the sense of fear and self-doubt. You know, I did have a fake it till you make it, an imposter syndrome when I came in. I'm a 3rd generation Navy person, but I promoted too fast, I believe, looking back on it now, right? And I was worried that the Navy I was very prideful, but the Navy was my family business. And what are you going to teach me about the Navy? I was born in a Navy shipyard. You know, I was raised in the Navy. I'm in the fire service. We call it a nugget, if you will. Okay, and so in that regard, I didn't want to screw things up. I didn't want mistakes to happen on my watch. So I was acting out of fear, in a balance of that and arrogance. Right. I protected myself. I protected my status. I protected my career. I was protecting, hiding behind position. I was the one that always had to have the last word, which in a way is kind of intimidating to people. My approachability went down. I did make sure that my fingerprints were on everything. And I would interrupt feedback, which discouraged honest feedback. And I knew in my mind that it couldn't be me that had the problem, or I wouldn't be promoting. Ruh-roh, Shaggy. Some math problems right there with that, right? It couldn't be me because my intentions were good. It couldn't be me because I'm still showing up. But it was me. It was me. I was the one that was driving that. And what it did for me is it separated me from the greater good. Other people, including my high school sweetheart. Just to close the loop on that, my wake-up call and subsequent reflection, self-awareness, and self-regulation, as I said, didn't happen soon enough to preserve my marriage. But it did help us form a better friendship later on in life, right? The human ego tends to compare with others, and I was never happy. I never felt fulfilled. I always felt overly competitive. Competitiveness is good, but be careful of the separation it creates. And it distorted what I perceived the world to be in a false sense of security or fear and self-doubt. So this is one of those slides that if people on the call want to take a quick screenshot of, I would ask them to do that, because this helped me really get my head around what was going on in my heart as well. A fun thing that we would do often is an Egos Anonymous meeting. Hi, my name is Bob. I'm an egomaniac. The last time my ego got in my way was, and I reflect on that. And at least once a month, I try and you notice the door is shut over here, right? I try to close my office door and have an Egos Anonymous meeting with myself and become a truth teller. At least be willing to say, is ego tying you up right now, Bob? How is this helping or hurting the very relationships you need for the results that you're responsible for? So, folks, if you haven't had a chance to conduct an Egos Anonymous meeting, we invite you to do that. Now, what would you imagine are the top 5 things that we have discovered that leaders fail to do? Well, in the work and the research that we've done, take a look at these. Now, it says provide feedback. Recognition actually is a form of feedback, but quite often when people get feedback, it's based on the heels of frustration or after action review that's pointing out the mistakes. I would say, folks, make sure that you scrutinize and evaluate your successes as much as what your perceived setbacks have been. Successes, sometimes acts of heroism had to happen to pull it off, and that's not sustainable as well. But catch people doing things right, number one. And number two, once you work out catching people doing things right, ask for feedback. Receive feedback before you try and give it. And that act of receiving feedback teaches your folks how to be approachable themselves by your actions. Listening, involving people in conversations. I have a 2-heartbeat rule, David. I think that you've seen this play out since we've known each other, that I will try to put 2 heartbeats between the time you stop talking and the time I start talking. And with that, enables you to have a better chance of feeling heard. With that, slows me down, so I'm not trying to fix and jump to conclusions. And in you're feeling heard by me, you feel respected by me. Even if we disagree about something, you would more than likely, and this is very truthful, and most of it's anecdotal on my part in my relationships, people are willing to talk with me again. They don't feel put off by me, right? Listen with the intent of making people feel heard. Using the right leadership style, this is one of the things that we're going to get to here shortly as well. Micromanaging is not a good thing. Why does it happen? What does it mean? Right? Sink or swim is not a good thing, even if it was done to you. Hey, I survived. I got it done. Well, you did. Go ahead and pound on your chest a little bit. That's great. But was it necessary? Was it unnecessary pain? Well, I came through it stronger. Well, congratulations. You were one of the 100 that made it through that. Happy for you. What about the other 99? Right? Make sure that people clearly know what's expected of them, what outcome you want them to achieve, when it's due by, why it's important. That's the part when you're busy that you tend to leave off in the conversation, and then ask them, what do they need to get it done? Not to do their job for them. What do they need? People have different needs at different times. That puts us squarely in touch with the approach called situationally leading. And when we situationally lead, we understand that your needs, Dave, are different on this than they might be on that. If I have a one-size-fits-all, as expeditious as it might seem and as effective as it might seem, I'm actually running the risk of over or under supervising you when I don't account for it, right? And all of this leads to better development of individuals. And these are the things that most leaders, busy leaders, well-intended leaders don't do well. They fail to do well. So this is another one of those slides that I like to remind myself of when I'm getting busy, when I go into business only Bob, B-O-B mode, Bob 1.0 mode. And Bob 1.0 is right under the surface. But I've worked hard to be Bob 2.0. A little bit more research is available, folks, if you want some more information. The military studied this a lot. There's some good resources there and references for you. I have a few more books that you might want to read, some recommended reading I have at the end of our session. Some of the things that you understand about toxic leadership and the characteristics of leadership as well. So for a deeper read, these are not Blanchard books. I'm not trying to hawk product here. But I would say that some good research comes out of this. And it's always important to give yourself an inventory, like I said, a checkup. And I like to actually call it from the chest up, not just the neck up, because it is about the heart, how you feel. And I know your feelings are actually down in the limbic region of your brain, right? But it's how you feel. Feeling affects how we think and feel affects what we do. So it's important, I think, from time to time to remind ourselves of this. So do most leaders intend to produce these effects? The answer is no. But these are the things that we're daily challenged with, right? Malicious compliant. only doing what you were told to do, David. And then I come to you and I said, well, you should have known better. And you should have asked. And David says, well, you should have been here, or you should have been more clear. And then what we're doing is a tongue-in-cheek term that I'm going to use here is we're shoulding all over the place when that happens. And it's just what it feels like. And it reduces the sense of well-being in the environment around us. So as we move through this, be mindful of what you're becoming good at. Conflict resolution, exit interviews, new hire training all the time. And what are your contributions to that? I've already shared with you that, unfortunately, I feel like I've got a PhD in exit interviews. I did way too many. I even wrote changes to the program to make it more efficient and thought I was doing something good. Crazy stuff. So what? Now what? And where are we at in time? Are we doing okay? Yeah, we've got a little bit more time. So I wanted to share another model of thinking that we have. And David, what we tend to do is, you've seen this before, but I would love to share this with others that might not have heard of this before. More research, all of it's available for you. And I saw in the chat box people requesting some of that, Dave, which is great. We call it the leadership purpose chain. It was our study of organizational vitality. What does leadership have a role in creating healthy organizations? Profitable, efficient, effective, budget-minded, sustainable, resilient organizations? And the answer is yes. And it comes from two main drivers: how the workforce feels about the work that they're doing and each other in doing that. We call that the passion. It extends beyond satisfaction, if you will. All right. And then how the constituents we serve feel about us. And they're going to have a direct driver into the health of the organization. Politically speaking, of course, community support speaking as well. There's a community, David, you may have heard of it, down in San Diego recently, that they were getting ready to shut down one of the departments down there, one of the stations down there. And the community rose up and said, oh, no, you don't. We need this, and here's why. And the constituents responded with massive support, and that station was able to have the budgets rearranged and reapportioned to keep them open. That's great support for that organization. And that's because of this link between employee work passion and constituent respect. How we feel, and leadership has a huge role in that, how we feel part of things, right? So we practice what are called strategic leadership, operational leadership, and this is where I'm going to move us quickly into the world of operational leadership. These leader behaviors in particular that create fairness and justice. And so our model for it is one, and like I said, we have research on this, ask for volume 3, right? And connecting the dots of employee work passion. And our causal chain is that people are always looking at leaders' behaviors. Those behaviors, if they're good behaviors, proper behaviors, they avoid and don't produce the mistakes that we've said, create the sense of well-being, which then drives these 5 intentions that you see on your screen. Those intentions then drive the behaviors and results. And this is just a visual, if you will, of what we just covered and went through. So I'm not going to belabor this too much, but I did want you to see that it's called working left to right. Whereas command and control, when I was raised with it, it was working right to left and just in those 2 boxes of results and behaviors. So my job as a leader is to create this sense of well-being, not friends, not friendship, not being nice. I'm being kind. And there's a difference between kindness and niceness. I'm not being weak. I can actually create ownership by owning things myself and showing people how to own things, have better, precise conversations that increase ownership, which means I don't have to do the punitive holding people accountable as much or as often. That sense of well-being lights the fire within people, David. If you operate just right to left of results and behaviors, that's lighting a fire under. Left to right is lighting a fire within. And then, of course, please take a screenshot of this, folks. These are the 12 things that we spend a lot of time inside of organizations and teams looking at and review. How healthy are these? Because these are the things that most matter a lot to people in the jobs that they do, and the generations in particular. And most particular, the younger generations coming in. And we were once those younger generations. I was a younger generation at one time. And when I look at this, yeah, I wanted to be connected to a leader. I wanted them to know me. I didn't need to be their friend. I wanted to be connected to others, but I lost that over time. My professional training in managing and supervising and exclusive use of just managing and supervising techniques pushed that out of the way. And results move at the speed of relationships, right? We see that. It's here. It's in the studies, right? And so Another point, and I want to bring this home, and then we'll be wrapping things up here, David, that I'd love to share with people is this aspect of how do you intend to influence and lead? These are 4 fundamental questions that we help people with, and you can help yourself with these. How do you intend to influence others and lead, and how do you know that you're doing that? What do you stand for? My life mission statement is to provide help, healing, and hope while living with honor, courage, and commitment. I know what I value. I know what I'm doing. That mission statement helps me, my life mission statement, know what to say yes and no to. It helps me stay on track, right? What is the legacy that I want to be known for? Folks, you are writing your legacy every single day, whether you're in charge of it or not. So what is the thing that you want to be known for, right? And how is what you're doing today contributing to that? How do your behaviors today reflect your beliefs on the leader you intend to be? 4 prescient, precise questions, David, that I would encourage and invite everybody on today's session to take stock of and work on, right? All right, so what we do programmatically as well, David, is I found a lot of value in understanding doing trust on purpose, becoming worthy of people's trust. To do that, I work in a report card that I use for myself. I measure myself on abilities, my ableness to do the job, demonstrating competence, which includes managing, supervising, and leading my folks, and being led, being a good follower as well. Do I act with integrity, speaking with truth? Am I dependable? Do I honor my commitments? And Bob 1.0 got a 0 on this part. Connected. How do I show that I care about others? These are the report cards that I mark myself on every birthday for sure that I have. By the way, it's April 23rd, just saying. A little bit of fun there. The other part of this takeaway is that these are multiplicative. Anything times 0 is a 0. So you've got to be good at all of them. Bob 1.0 was good at 3 of them. I needed to be good at all 4. And that's where my work goes into. Even to this day, I put an emphasis on the connected part of this. Do I show that I care about others? Communication. Do I build a sense of rapport? Is the only time people see me is when there's a problem? Uh-oh, that's not creating rapport. Bob's here, they turtle up or they disappear. I want people to see I'm there. Oh, I've been wanting to talk to you. I want it to feel like a partnership, right? We all know what the authority and the levels of authority are and position are. That's great, but I don't have to constantly reinforce that if I've created an environment of trust. And these are the 4 components that help build trustworthiness, right? I am accountable when I mess things up as well. I'll acknowledge what I've done, David. I'll apologize. I'll own it. Everybody's unique in the way that I need to tell them these things when I tell them, but I make sure I do it as fast as I can. Being approachable, people can let me know when I've messed up, and then I'll own that. Notice what I just said there. I'll own it. That's what step 2 is. And then I will let them know what I'm going to do different. And then I begin to restore trust by doing that differently. They start to believe me again. They start to find me a little bit more dependable again. They then say, I guess he's learned how to do this better. I'm able. And that increases connectedness. So it's a cascade failure, but it's also a tower building exercise where you got to build it one piece at a time as well. So that's how we tend to restore trust, by owning things. The last model I'd like to share with you all is what we're really known for and what has been a benefit of me. This is the operational leadership model I went to in the Navy when I tried to rebuild my career and rebuild my relationships. It tells me, and I'll just show it to you real quick here, that there are 4 levels that people go through as they try to achieve mastery over anything that they're trying to do. And you can be at any one of these development levels at any one time. Development levels reflect where a person's at, not who a person is. That's a key takeaway right there. And so these development levels, the things that I'm enthusiastically beginning at, I'm going to need a high amount of direction from my leader. So what are the things that I need some help with? I'm getting ready to learn how to tie fishing flies. I'm semi-retired now, so I'm learning how to tie fishing flies. I'm very excited, but I'm clueless. I'm unconsciously incompetent. I need to be taught, told, shown how, right? I don't need a lot of supportive behavior that's helping me with my feelings because my feelings are positive. What I need is a lot of input from my knowledge and skill, my lower level of knowledge and skill here. Now, I'm eventually going to get frustrated with this. The flies that I tie are not going to look the same way, perform the same way that I intended them. And as my frustration increases, then I need a leader. I need somebody to help me a little bit more, remind me of the progress I'm making, encourage me a little bit more, find some of the things that I'm doing right, redirect me, help me go back through the stages. So this is called high direction, high support. We call this the coaching approach, right? Because I'm disillusioned in my learning at this point. I'm still willing to do it, however. And as I move through this, I'm trying to gain confidence in my competence. I'm at the third level of development. Well, at that point, I don't need somebody to teach me. They're going to overteach me, and I'll never gain the confidence in my competence at this point. So this is for most first responder leaders, and particularly those in the fire service. This is where patience is available to you because you have perspective that they're at D3. They're not a soup sandwich. This is the leadership style that I had the most difficult time with as Bob 1.0 because I had a misunderstanding, David. I felt like you must not have confidence because you don't know what you're doing, so I'm just going to teach you louder. And that just shuts you down and it interrupts your development towards D4. And when I'm able, my knowledge level is high, my skill level is high, and my confidence is high. That's what commitment is. The feelings are high. It's at that point in time where it's safe to delegate to me. Notice it says low direction, low support. This model of partnering, this model of leading situationally is solid gold, and it's a prime way of thinking about how to lead, and it's the model that we see most often, and when it's done appropriately and done correctly, the key contributor to employee passion, which is a key driver to constituent respect, which is a key driver to organizational vitality. A huge model for us. So I wanted to share that with the team and just give everybody a chance to see that. When we effectively lead using those two approaches of becoming worthy of trust and situationally leading, we're going to increase resiliency in behavioral health and wellness. That's the payoff for us. A couple of things that I'd love to share with the team right now are some recommended reading. So if you'd like to take a quick screenshot of this, and in this, it's a wide range of different things that have been important for me to read through the years. I really appreciate that book, Left of Bang, by Patrick Van Horn and Jason Riley. Left of Bang is, I've extrapolated a little bit for my own use as well. It's from the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program, and it's about awareness. And it's about understanding what's happening before the actual event. And most of us train our workforce in the fire services in particular, what to do when the alarm goes up, right? When the call out happens, when you're dispatched, and then you're off and running. You've trained to do that response, which we call at bang and right of bang. And we've got to be great at that, right? That's what our community deserves. That's what our hearts are driving us to do. However, most of the time in life in fire service is spent left of bang. So how do we choose to show up and lead each other? As if you do get a chance to read that book, I would love for you to reach back out to me. There's my contact information there, bob.freytag@blanchard.com. I'd love to hear your reactions to this, right? To any of these. Randy Conley and Ken Blanchard put together a beautiful book called Simple Truths of Leadership, 52 Ways to be a Servant Leader and Build Trust. How many weeks do we have, David?
52.
52. Choose one of these a week to work on. It's a great way to get your basic blocking and tackling down, right? How to balance that when work and families collide by Andy Stanley. Corley Moore out of Moore, Oklahoma, battalion chief out there, has done some wonderful work in the world of complacency. And so there's what he calls the 9 L's. I love Corley's work in this. If you get a chance to read that. Of course, I'm partial to the Turn the Book Around by Commander Marquette. Turn the Ship Around is about the submarines and what we call the Leader program. He really did put together a seminal piece of work for submariners and how we get and stay resilient, how we get and stay functional and produce the results consistently. What's going on? So there's a number of great books that you can read here. I would like to share just real quick close on this. When you're working across the generations and you're working with a lot of different personalities and needs that people have, there are some things that you can do. Dave, I don't know if I could ask you to catch these in the chat box for me. If you wouldn't mind, I'll keep
Sure.
them short. But it is practice this sense of situationally leading. Practice situationally leading. Flex your communication style, right? Bridge the traditions and the new ideas. Bring those. The strength of new ideas is that they'll challenge some of the stinking or perhaps old thinking that doesn't quite work well for us anymore, right? Build these cross-experiential teams. Build cross-experiential teams, right? Pair experienced responders with newer ones, right? Encourage mentorship and reverse mentoring. These are leadership choices that you can make, right? Support two-way learning environments and show people how to learn by being first to raise your hand when you don't. Be the example. You are always leading by example. You have no choice in that. Your choice is what those examples will be. Customize the motivation and recognition programs, right? People are different. So how do they like to be recognized? Another one is emphasize mission and purpose. Help them see why we're doing what we're doing, not just do what I told you to do. Help them see the impact that they're having. Create these spaces for dialogue. Remember, a dialogue isn't just you speak and you speak again. A dialogue is a two-way. It's not a running monologue. Speak with each other, not at each other. Train folks to be good, what I'll call generational translators, right? Help people suspend judgment, not be so fast to misjudge, right? Prevent the sense of misjudgment and foster connectedness. Of the one things, and I hope that you ask me that question, Dave, that you've asked in the past, what's the one thing? I'm going to talk about that if you ask that question. I call it the city slickers question. And then keep policy and culture mission focused. That would be the last one, David. Keep your policy and culture mission focused. Create this sense of ownership in the community. And so with that, David, I know that we're just about at time. There are some next steps that we would ask for people to consider. Register for the Leadership for First Responders course that we have. Take a leadership readiness quiz for first responders. We have that. Look at the leadership development solutions for first responders. I'm running a cohort right now on all of that as well, David. And then we've got other additional research and insights available for teams. And I'd love to turn it over to you, David. Folks, thank you so much for giving me this time with you. I know you'll never get this back. This, like all things we do on this call, all of us on this call, is an act of service, right? It's an act of wanting to provide help, healing, and hope. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your time, and thank you. David?
Bob, thank you very much. That was a lot of wonderful information that you've shared with us around this idea of how we can overcome destructive leadership. There are some questions that have come in both here in the chat panel and also in the Q&A panel. We'll go ahead and answer as many questions as we can with the time that we've got left. Also, Amy Quiter has put in a link to Blanchard's First Responders page. You will find there at that page, and you can check that out at any time. You'll see some of the links to upcoming first responder classes, also some of the information around how Blanchard approaches working with first responders in a leadership capacity. So be sure to check out that link while we're handling some of these questions. Bob, the first question that came in, and I'm guessing this is a question that you've heard from others when you've done a presentation like this, which is, how do you work with someone who is, in your opinion, is a toxic leader or a supervisor? How do you open up a conversation with them? What's your advice for us there?
Well, the stem of the question comes from a history that you already have. So sometimes the history, if it hasn't reached a point of contempt in both parties, there are manageable first steps that you can take. I would ask the person or anybody that's interested in that question to read 10 pages from a book called Blink. It's an older book that's been out for a little while, right? But the name of the book is Blink. And in Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, the pages in the hard cover edition are pages 20 to 30. You'll know that you've done a good job finding it because it's a sub chapter in the very first chapter called The Love Lab. I know, a weird name. But what it does is it actually shows you the behaviors that lead to an outcome in relationships that once it reaches this outcome, it's going to be difficult to navigate. So start with an inventory of where you're at in a relationship and it is called contempt. If you don't have contempt for each other, it's just, difficult, but I could see a path to working with this person, then there's hope. And with that comes the ability to then manifest a conversation that says, hey, Dave, I'm not sure how we've been doing, but I would love to take a look at over the course of the next 3 months, where we're going at the end of those 3 months to just take a look at what's going well. What are we learning? And what do we need to change, if that's okay? And if that's not doable, then I'm here to support you. That's my job. I'm here to help you be successful. That's my job. What do I need to do to do a better job for you in being successful? And so that takes a lot of humble pie. You got to get your ego under control. Most toxic leaders that aren't intending to be toxic will respond favorably to loyalty. That doesn't mean, pardon the expression, sucking up. It doesn't mean, doing that thing that we talk about when we tug on our noses. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's not yielding your value set. What it's saying is, I'm more focused on helping you be successful. And I'd like to take a look at what's getting in the way of me being able to help you and be successful. I actually, unfortunately, have had the chance to work with one pathological leader and 2 leaders who weren't pathological, but they were difficult. The cool thing about those 2 leaders is they were consistent in what they were difficult in. That means that I wasn't always on my back heels. I knew what I was getting into. I knew what to expect. I could build up the energy needed to face that, and through their consistencies, find a way to be successful. The one pathological person was not. I didn't know who was going to show up from day to day or meeting to meeting. And I never did develop the type of relationship that I aspired to. But I'll tell you, I worked hard. And of the regrets I have in life, that's not one of them in the way that I responded. And I didn't give up on them and I didn't give up on me. But boy, did it take a bite.
Got it. Thank you, Bob. A question came in, this one through the Q&A panel. The question is, in your experience and studies, what is the root cause of toxic leadership? Have you examined how job-related stressors may impact one's leadership ability?
Yeah, I do. I have, as well as have many others who, and maybe a few of you on this call. Chief Harshaw, I see you at IOP there in South Carolina. I'm looking forward to checking in with you and connecting as well and getting your take on these things also. James Lee out of Spartanburg. I've got an affinity for South Carolina. I did a lot of growing up in there, have a lot of friends there as well. But what I have found is that what drives people to that is just trying to do their best. Limited tool set, supreme pressure to get stuff done, and being willing to say yes to opportunity. And that formula, when you don't have the right tool set for the opportunity, leads to the stress. The stress leads to these baked in reactions. So part of it is who we are, what we were born with. Part of it is how we've been raised, the tool sets we picked up. And another part is we don't take time to look in the mirror, Dave. We don't take time to say that. And some of that might be ego and pride, but others is I just don't have time. And so what happens is we get dull and we get complacent and we get numb. And we're actually trained to insulate and isolate. It's an easier manifestation of these poorer relationship behaviors. It's tough to lead in the fire service. It's tough to look at people in their worst days, doing the best we can. And it didn't always work out, and taking, a hit on that. That piles up. So how do we take care of each other? How do we take care of each other? How do we take care of ourselves? That's the preeminent question there, because toxic leaders are people that generally haven't found a way to help take care of themselves in their service of trying their best to take care of others.
Great. Thank you, Bob. Another question. Oh, and I was just going to let everyone know, great news. You will be receiving a PDF copy of today's slides in your follow-up message. So I just want to let all of you know that. That will be a part of the follow-up message that you receive from us. Bob, another question that came in was, how do you navigate a problem like blatant favoritism or preferential treatment, that when you've brought it to the leader's attention, they continue to deny that it exists
Yeah.
and say something along the lines of, "I'm sorry you feel that way." What do you do with something like that?
All right. So from this point forward, nothing I give is legal advice. This is not legalness. What I have seen, how other people who've been in a similar circumstance, and myself included, is we vote with our feet.
Hmm.
Leaders, one of the costs of toxic leadership is retention and recruitment, and leaders suffer that. So we either quit and leave, or we quit and stay. We sub-optimize. Enjoy what you can, endure what you must, have a plan. Give them access, give them fair process and treatment yourself, give them a chance, and they're making choices, and the consequence of their choices is at some point an interdepartmental transfer, maybe an unfavorable recommendation. Where do you work, Bob? Oh, I work for this guy named Dave. And they can see right away that they don't want to work for that guy, Dave, right? So this is what keeps most people awake at night. They feel themselves impossible. They feel themselves a victim being persecuted. Who's going to rescue them? So it's part of that drama triangle thing from Cartman's work. And so I would say, don't take on the role of victim here. Yeah, you've got to endure a few things. Take care of the relationships around you so that you've got a little bit more energy to endure that relationship that's not helpful. And if it's truly unfair, but not legally unfair, that's the tough point of stress. You're going to end up voting with your feet. Most people do.
Got it. Thanks, Bob. I think we've got just time for a few more questions. This one came in a little bit different take. Can you talk about overcoming the effects of a person in a leadership position who's nice and a good human being, but they're just unqualified and unable to lead? What's your advice if you've got someone who's a great person, maybe willing, trying hard, but just isn't demonstrating the ability to lead? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I invite in the rarer circumstances where that's been true in my life, Dave, I've learned to invite them to my team meetings. I've learned to invite them to watch others lead well. I've tried to increase their span of attention and connection to the other places where it's working well. And it might seem a bit passive aggressive, hey, why are you inviting me to see Dave all the time? Here's where it's the art of the long view, if I may kind of connect with that expression. I'm trying to develop a trusted relationship with that person. So ultimately, we can talk about what's going well, what are we learning, and what needs to change. This is a mentoring up or a leading up moment. And leaders are going to be more available. And there's a chance that they share that truth that you just shared inside themselves as well. There's a fear, there's a worry that's associated with that. Only 1.3%, I think, is what the science says on this. The studies say are actually numb. That it can't be them. They're never available to hear this from the outside. That means about 98.7% of people are available to hear it if you get the right relationship developed with them. And that
Got it.
becomes my new mission. Thank you, David.
Thanks, Bob. Bob, one last question, then I would like to get to the question I wanted to ask you as far as what you're hoping folks would remember. This is a tough one that came in. What about the very top of an organization? If you have a sense that the very top of the organization has got some toxicity in it, as far as what you've identified as a toxic leader, I'm guessing it's a little bit more sensitive in this case. Any thoughts as far as what someone in the middle of an organization might be able to do if they're having a sense that some of what you've talked about today could apply at the top of their organization?
Well, Dave, the last half of my career at Blanchard has been spent right here. I'm one of our few culture change consultants, as you know, that we have in this. And this is where we work most specifically in some of the larger departments as well. So I run into this uh, need, this pain point often. So there's a couple different strategies that I've found that have been helpful. Not knowing the person, not needing to know the department that you're in as well. I would say Sometimes patience and perseverance outlast them. Become the best leader that you can be. Take care of the relationships you have control over so that your folks who are looking at you as the organization don't also have the same opinion. You do have to toe the company line, which is difficult when you're at values odds with people. But one of the strategies is to outlast them. They're not going to be in that job forever. Do you feel that the community that you're in, do you feel that the department as a whole and historically is a good department? Is this a department you feel like you can believe in and you don't have contempt for? Then it's actually, even though it feels like forever, a transitory thing with the leaders at top. The other one is build your key stakeholders. Build your key stakeholders. Chain of command, I get it. And we don't ever want to jump chain of command for the formal things we need to do, but the informal, perhaps even more important elements of organizational health or the informal are the key stakeholder management. That doesn't mean that we're spreading gossip and innuendo and doing, bad talking behind people's back. What do you stand for? Figure out those 4 questions that we shared with you in the session. Be a beacon for others around you, and that beacon is going to draw unfavorable stares from time to time, but people will know what you stand for. That in and of itself will present resilience to your workforce and you as you weather the storm of these poor leaders making poorer choices in the organization.
It's great. Thank you, Bob. Before we turn the presentation back over to Ruth Marie, just wanted to ask you that one question. If there is one thing, if you wanted to sum up and hope that folks remember walking away from today's presentation, what would it be?
It's 1.5 things, David. First off, don't give up. By the number of people on this call, you can see people care. You can see people are probably sharing the same pain. You're important, right? And people are dependent on you. So be approachable. That's it. Be approachable. Be safe, right? Demonstrate to people what good looks like by becoming good, which means that you're not always going to be right. That's it, David.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's been great to spend this hour with you and everyone that joined us on this call. You really made it special with your questions, and thanks for being here together with